Okay. So we are now approaching the third paragraph in the mimer of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, called Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, which was said in 1942, Tafshin Beit, on the second day of the holiday of Shavuot. And in it, he's explaining the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. And the Mishnah is like one of the chapters, the small chapters, paragraphs, and legal paragraphs in a tractate which is called Pirkei Avot. And so this is in the third one of the Mishnahs that's in the third chapter. And it says like this, that man is dear because he is created in the image of God. It says the Rebbe, this refers to all mankind. And why does it refer to all mankind? Because all mankind has what's called intellect. Or in the language of Chassidut, it's called nefesh hasichlit. And this intellect contains in it the power of free choice. A person can make free choices. He can decide what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. In the cases of a Jew has the ability to choose what God wants and what God does not want. What is right and wrong is not depending on what I feel or what I think or what society says or what history says or what our heritage says, but rather it depends on absolutely what is right and what is wrong. And how do we know that? Because that's what we get from the Torah, but we have to feel the godliness of the Torah. And therefore every Jew has what's called a second soul. And this second soul is called the godly soul. The godly soul. And it's the job of the Jews to inform the whole world that God is creating them. And that God is creating the whole world all the time. And He's creating the world for a purpose. And He's creating the world from His kindness and from His love. And that every detail in the world has a purpose to it. That's the job of the Jews. The first person to realize this was Abraham. But it requires a lot of really difficult choices to make. The whole world is making choices. What's best for me in this world and the world to come? And the Jew has to make the choice, what does God want and what God doesn't want? Forget about what's if it's better for me or not better for me. So that's the godly soul of the Jew. Every Jew also has a natural soul like everybody else. A natural soul is a healthy, normal, selfish soul. I exist, therefore I am. Right? I can think, therefore I...
Nature a part of God?
What?
Isn't nature a part of God?
Everything is part of God, but you have to realize what that means. Nature is part of God. Some people have a nature that they are thieves, and that nature certainly does come from God. But God gives us that nature in order that we should defy it, not to do it. There's some things that God wants us to do and some things that God doesn't want us to do. Nature doesn't determine what God wants or what God doesn't want. Nature is what we have. Just the same thing as like colors don't determine what a painting is going to be. Or notes don't determine what
But there are aspects of God.
what a composition is going to be.
But aren't they all aspects of God?
Right. So let's say, for instance, in an orchestra, if somebody plays a wrong note, so they evict him, pays wrong note. What do you mean? That's music, isn't it? Music. What difference is all of it? It's all music. What difference is if I play what everybody wants me to or not? I just play what I want. Or a painter, he just throws anything he wants to on the canvas. I mean, for one time those things were going for $1 million a painting, but now I think they caught on at $2 million. So a Jew has a feeling what to do. What am I supposed to do with nature? The godly soul says, do what the Creator wants. The natural soul says, do what you want. We have the intellectual soul is in the middle, and it decides what it should do. Most people, like for instance the Jews, after they received the Torah on Mount Sinai, God appeared to them. So they said, let's worship a golden calf. Said, yeah, but it says in the Torah, we just heard it from God, don't worship the golden calf. But it seems like a really good idea. And in fact, it was a really good idea. Everybody worshiped the golden calf and they feel really good. They really enjoyed it. They really enjoyed worshiping the golden calf. The only problem was it was totally against what God wanted. If Moses wouldn't have come from Mount Sinai, nobody would have known, huh?
In cartoons that I see with my son, they have a similar type of battle. So Jimmy Cricket, he's got
Right.
a bad thing, or should do the good thing, and then he's got something in the middle that he calls his conscience.
Right.
Is the conscience
Yep.
similar to the
That's right. Yes,
soul?
yes. Conscience is something like the intellectual soul. Who makes a big thing out of the conscience? That's Professor Viktor Frankl. Professor Viktor Frankl, by him, the conscience is the guiding force of the soul for good and for bad.
And it's just a different word, but we're talking about the same thing.
Right.
But isn't it all aspect of God?
Like I said, you keep asking the same question. Everything is the aspect of God. The question is, what do we do with it?
We have to do the right thing.
We have to do the right thing. So doing the wrong thing is also an aspect of God.
But God gives free will.
That's right, yes. Yes. Everybody has two legs. And you can go to a hardware store and you can buy a saw. You can buy a saw.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can take the saw and you can saw off your leg.
That's illegal.
But a person could do it. He goes on a desert island where there's no government, and he applies a tourniquet. If he wants to, he can saw off his leg. A person, if he wants to, you have total free will. You can do it. And if you do it, you succeed. Maybe you wouldn't do it, but there's all sorts of not normal people in the world. You're still young. So a person, if he wants to, he can do a crazy thing like that. But he can do it. And it comes from God. And it comes from God. Right? Right? It comes from that. It depends where you are.
If you're in a public place where there's a government, that's illegal.
Forget about that. We're talking about, can a person do it or not? Yes, he can.
Yes,
Does that come from God?
Yes.
Yes, everything comes from God. But it's stupid and it's against what God wants. But you can do it against what God wants. You can.
I will not do it.
In fact, it even says like this: if a person makes a right choice, the choice is really not his. It's God's choice. If a person makes a wrong choice, then that's his. So let's take this person. He decides, I'm not going to cut off my leg. Right? Whose choice is that? It's his. He chose what God wants. So it's really God's choice. If he says, I'm going to cut it off, then that's his choice. Right? He did it.
God runs the whole world.
Okay, let's go. Now we have to understand what choices to make. So we have the intellectual soul, the nefesh hasichlit, and that is in the middle telling us what choices to make. How would we, so it says, let's look and see. Gimel. Hine. Zehu, this is the reason. Atam. Ma, why? Nefesh hasichlit, that the intellectual soul. Now again, remember that the intellectual soul is what makes man, all man, created in the image of God, and what makes all mankind dear to God. Every human being, every non-Jew, every Jew, dear to God. But the Jews have a special quality in their intellectual soul. Namely what? That it is susceptible. Every Jew, not just high Jews, holy Jews, spiritual Jews, every single Jew, that it is a receptacle for godly ideas, godly awareness. Not just spiritual awareness, but godly awareness. Spiritual and godly is very similar, but it still is not the same thing. Because God creates the spiritual. So this is the reason why that the nefesh hasichlit, why the intellectual soul, he mamutza is a connector, between. See where we are in Gimel. Between nefesh elokit, the godly soul, the nefesh bahamid, and the animal soul. The seichel umidot, that the intellect and the emotions of the godly soul, What is this intellect and the emotions of the godly soul? The awareness of God, the emotions, love of God, fear of God. Mitlabshim are put benefesh sichlit into the intellectual soul. Ve'im, and even though the nefesh sichlit, the intellectual soul, he gam kain minoga, it also is part of the creation, just like the animal soul. Avohim midrega elyona de noga, but it is an upper level of noga, of nature. Now this word noga means to shine. If you look in the Tanya, it explains there's two types of creation. There's one type of creation which is called impure creation, and there's another type of creation which is called pure, potentially pure creation. Potentially. Then there's a third type of a creation which is called holy creation. The angels, for instance, are holy. Angels say, holy, holy. The Jewish godly soul is even holier. The intellectual soul is in between. It has the potential of being holy, but it's not holy. Holy means anything that reveals God. Anything that reveals godliness. The holy temple in Yerushalayim is called holy. My house here in Kfar Chabad is not holy. It depends what I do with it. If I put a mezuzah on the doors, if I do good things, if I use my house that I can close the doors and do what I want to behind the doors, then it's exactly the opposite. Therefore, he's seichel, but the intellectual soul is like my house. It's not the holy temple. The holy temple, it can become a holy temple. The intellectual soul of a Jew is a receptacle for the feeling that I am being created, that there is a creator who really cares about everything that I do, and I have the merit and the ability and the obligation to serve the creator of the whole universe. And that's what the godly soul feels. And it convinces the intellectual soul. Now remember, we're talking about one person here. We're not talking about three different people. Every single Jew is like three people. On one hand, he has a godly feeling that says you have to do what God wants. He's your creator. He loves you. Do it. Find out what it says in the Torah. It's a big, big merit. A big merit that you can just do anything the creator wants. Amazing. The animal soul says, no such thing. No such thing. What are you talking about? Just live a real life, a normal life. What are you talking about? These spooks and this stuff like that. Just live. And the intellectual soul is in the middle saying, maybe he's right, maybe he's right, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. That maybe the godly soul is right, that's something that a non-Jew doesn't have. A non-Jew doesn't have this thing that it worries him, bothers him, right? Maybe I should do what God wants, maybe. What bothers him is what's going to happen after I die, how I can have a better tomorrow. How can I live a life according to my conscience? My conscience is bothering me, etc. A Jew can have a feeling that my conscience doesn't bother me. I have no compunctions whatsoever about doing, but somehow or other deep down, it's not the Jewish thing to do. This is not what God wants. Take an example. The example, Abraham taking his son, Yitzchak, to sacrifice. And that's in the beginning of every prayer book. Every human being, conscience would tell him, don't sacrifice your son. What are you doing? Even more, every human being would say, don't kill people. What are you killing people? But Avram knew 100% this is what the Creator wants. This somehow or other is going to be for the best. It went against his mind, against his soul, against his heritage, against his history, against everything that he had worked for. But nevertheless, he knew this is what God wanted. And he put everything aside, including his conscience. Everything aside. Unless you want to say that's sort of his conscience. But it's not. That's what's called the godly soul. I'm sure that every in Russia, a person that didn't turn in his parents, he knew that his parents, in communist Russia, a person that knew that his parents had money hidden under the pillow, under the mattress, right, in order to put their son through university. Holding money was forbidden. A child that didn't turn his parents in, his conscience bothered him. His conscience bothered him. right? In Hitler's Germany, if you didn't go out and kill people, kill Russians, kill Scandinavians, kill French, kill Jews, kill this, your conscience bothered you. What's wrong with you? Right? If you didn't do it, then you were a communist. Something's wrong with you. So conscience can be a little bit of a tricky thing. Contrary to what Professor Viktor Frankl says, which I have tremendous respect for him, and I'm not saying that I'm right. But that seems what it says. This is what's called the godly soul. The godly soul, the idea is to make the person one, not to ignore your animal soul, but that your animal soul should agree, hey, maybe I'm being created, maybe I should do what the Creator wants. The nefesh bahamit, that the animal soul, he midos, is mostly emotions. The animal soul is I want, I like, I feel. I. When a person says I, what does he point to? His heart. I think, if you ask me, the person does what I think,
So you're kind of describing like a godly conscience and an animal soul-based conscience.
Okay. Yes. A natural conscience. V'lo midot ra'ot. The animal soul is not necessarily bad. Shezeh yetzer hara. What's called the yetzer hara, that is bad emotions. Selfish emotions. The nefesh bahamit, and the animal soul, eno ra. It is not selfish. Aval hi midos, but it is emotions. It's selfishness, but on a very high, refined level. So we have the Yetzer Hora. That's what's called bad, selfish emotions. I don't care about anybody else. I'm going to do what I want. I want the end. What decides it in the end is what's in it for me. What's in it for me? That's the Yetzer Hara. The Nefesh Bahamit is, sometimes they'll say, you know what? Maybe I should help the other guy, help this old lady across the street. Maybe I should be an honest person. Maybe I should pick up this $100 bill, give it back to the person who... I'll give you a simple example. There was a very strange, somebody showed me a video that they did the same thing everywhere. They took a person, stood him on the street, put glasses on like he was blind, and he stood near a bus stop, and he held a $100 bill in his hand. And he said, can you give me change for this 10, please? Can you give me change for the 10? So they did it in different countries. In every country, nobody told the man, hey, that's a $100 bill. Some people gave him change for 10. Some people ran away, right? They did it in Israel, and we're not talking about religious people. Every single person said, my friend, you have a $100 bill there. He did with a 100-star note.
That's different.
Yeah. He said, hey, that's $100. Who told you this is 10? Who told you this is 10? This is 100. This is 100. How much money do you need? How much you need? You need take 5 shekels. Put that money back in your pocket. I don't know if in America everybody did. It could be that there were a couple people. I don't remember that though. What I do remember is in Israel, every single person. Good. I mean, listen. It was a lucky day. I'm sure there were people who would also take it. There's a lot of people on drugs and things like that, unfortunately, here. But it's a rare type of a conscience. But nevertheless, that's not the godly soul. That's a natural soul. Wants to be a nice guy, right? He feels the other person's need, right? If I was in a situation bad enough, the guy's blind, I'm also going to steal from him. A lot of people also, they look for a chance to do a good deed, right? We're not talking about religious Jews. They don't care about heaven or hell. It makes no difference to them. They just like to be nice. The nefesh baham is the animal soul. He midos, not midos ros. The animal soul is what's called emotions. That's like, 200, I'll give the money back. The Yetzer Hora, what's called the Yetzer Hora, that is what's called truly selfish emotions. The nefesh asichlit and the intellectual soul, we're now on the 5th line down. See where? 5th line down. Lihiyod, because. First word on the line. Lihiyod, because. Shihim midrega elyona shebenoga. because it is a high level of the creation, Hari hu seichel, it is what's called intellect. And even though that the intellectual soul is seichel anushi, it is what's called human intellect, and its very essence. What is this nefesh hasichlit? It's my mind. My mind. It's the seat of my free choice. Right? I'm aware of this, I'm aware of this, I make a decision. Who's making the decision? My intellectual soul is weighing things out. Should I do what God wants? Should I do what I want? The intellectual soul, in its essence, is natural. Umedrega yesh, and it is a separate existence. Umetziut, and it feels itself to be separate, totally separate from God, or if there is God at all, it just feels itself. But nevertheless, this intellectual soul, which that's the image of God which we're made in, hine liyoto seichel dak, because it is a very refined intellect. In the Jewish people, sheyesh bo hergesh hafla ruchnis, it has naturally the feeling of high spiritual things. Erhata klep, it has an attachment to ruchnistika edelkeit, to spiritual refinement. Therefore, it is a vessel to the emotions of the godly soul, that are enclosed in it. For instance, it says by Moshe with the burning bush, right? Moshe, where was the burning bush? The burning bush was on Mount Sinai. We saw the burning bush way before he took the Jews out of Egypt. He said, he was walking, all of a sudden he saw this burning bush, Visarali wrote, he turned to see. So Rashi says he turned from here and went to there. What does it mean? Suddenly his mind was aroused. What's going on over here? There's something godly, something unusual is happening over here. Right? There's something holy. Curiosity. But it's curiosity, spiritual curiosity. Therefore, it has a curiosity to his Jewish identity. That suddenly he can become aware of ideas of God, sensing God. It's almost like a deaf person, and he sees somebody playing piano and swaying back and forth, and he goes over and he looks and he stands there for hours just watching him. And a person will come along and say, "It's very beautiful, isn't it?" Right? What's wrong? You don't speak English? Hey, what's wrong with you, man? Why aren't you answering me? Right? And the guy just doesn't hear. He's deaf. Doesn't hear anything. So he pushes him. He says a sign, "I'm deaf." He says, "If you're deaf, what are you listening to the music for? What's going on?" He senses there's something there. He can't figure out what it is. But there's something in his soul that's longing for this. It's missing music. It's missing harmony. It's missing something. He knows there's something there. Another person maybe wouldn't care, right? This person that was mad at first says, "Listen, we got to make an operation on you. We have to see. I'm interested." He becomes curious also. He makes an operation, he hears, and the person becomes a great musician. Right? Inside of his soul was churning around harmony and melody and rhythm, and right? But he didn't know it. He never heard anything before. But he had a sense, he had a curiosity, he had something going on. So that's the godly, that's the intellectual soul of a Jew. It has a curiosity, it has a sense, it has a feeling that I'm not aware of something. Right? I have a godly soul, a feeling of godliness inside of me, and I know that it exists. I want to be something like Abraham. But I don't know what's talking about. What does it mean? What does the whole thing mean? Oh. Yeah, let's take a short break. Oh, when it fell off. Huh?